Start. All right. Hello, everyone, and good evening. A very warm welcome to another webinar from PsychSpace. Today's topic is both timely and highly relevant in today's world: understanding loneliness in a hyper-connected society. In a time when we're just a click away from connecting with anyone across the globe, it's fascinating yet concerning that feelings of loneliness are reported at record levels. Today, we'll explore why this happens, its impact on mental well being, and how we can foster true connections in our lives. Joining us today are our experts who possess knowledge and experience in the realm of mental health. Allow me to introduce to our prominent speakers for the evening. Firstly, we have Ms. Dipshikha Kalita, who has completed her bachelor's in psychology under Guwahati University and has her specialization in clinical psychology from Assam Downtown University. Currently, she is working as a psychologist at PsychSpace. Then we have Miss Alankrita Saikia, a mental health enthusiast who has completed her bachelor's degree in psychology from Sikkim University and master's in applied psychology from Nerim Group of Institutions. Currently, she's a psychologist at PsychSpace. A very warm welcome to our esteemed speakers. Thank you for generously sharing your time with us today. I'm confident that our audience is eagerly anticipating the insights and expertise that you'll bring up to this important discussion today.
Thank you so much for your warm welcome, Bhavna. We are very glad to be part of this webinar and very looking forward to starting the discussion.
All right. So, without further ado, let's delve into our topic. We have a set of questions here. The first question that I'd like to ask is how do you define loneliness in the context of our hyper-connected society? And like, are there any different types of loneliness that we should be aware of?
That is a really good question, Bhavna, and I would like to go ahead with it. So,
Okay.
when we talk about loneliness, what is loneliness? First of all, it is like a subjective emotional state, and it is characterized by feelings of isolation, right? Emptiness, or maybe disconnection from the world or people around it. So,
Right.
it can even occur when there are people around you, okay? So, like, it doesn't mean that it's something which will only occur when there is no one around you. So you can be constantly surrounded by people and still feel very lonely. All right.
Hmm.
So our life in this century, 21st century, is very much, it can be very unexpected. Lots of things has changed, and we have gone from sending post via, like, post office to sending a message through the tap of our finger. So much changes happen. So now what we see that the age of digitalization has completely changed our spectrum of communication. Social media is there. So in social media, what happens that even though we are physically alone, we are also at the same time we're also connected. We're on our phones at all time. Uh, Excuse me, is there an echo going on with my audio?
Yeah, yeah. A slight. Not that
Is it
much actually.
disturbing?
No, no.
Okay, all right. So, what was I saying about social media, right? So,
Right.
social media has given us this sort of, very, it's a very well connectivity platform, but at the same time, we are never truly alone. Even when we are physically isolated from the world, we still have have, like, our phones. We're constantly engaging with media, we're constantly connecting, or like constantly leaving a message, constantly DMing people. So that's the true picture. So how how
Right.
can it be that when we are so much connected, but at the same time we are so lonely? So there's a paradox, right? We are
Yeah.
connected but we are lonely. So what
Yeah.
happens is that when we are connected to hundreds of people, it does not mean that those connections are genuine or authentic, right? It does not satisfy our basic need of companionship. So all those connections that we have, they can give rise to this deception, the deception of social involvement. You feel like you are, engaging with people, you feel like you are talking with people, you feel like you are contributing, but actually that is very superficial. It's not natural, it's not a natural connection that you share, or it's not the connection that your body and soul actually seeks, right? It's
Hmm.
something very superficial in nature. So this endless cycle of browsing, endless cycle of talking has given rise to this paradox of being lonely in a very hyper-connected world. Right. So when we talk about the types of loneliness, it can be emotional in nature, it can be social in nature, it can be situational in nature, and it can be existential in nature. So, what is emotional loneliness? Emotional loneliness is something when we have, like, a lot of maybe friends or followers, but we still are lacking that deep emotional or intimate bond that we seek. Right? So, we are very much emotionally lonely. Then we have social loneliness. Social loneliness has to do with that support, that social support that we have. We suppose there are lots of, you're connected to a lots of friends online, but in reality, in the real world out, you don't have that social support, right? Even though they are constantly saying that it's all right, we are there for you, but in real life, when you need or when you seek that presence of a person around you, that thing is not there. So you're going through social loneliness. And situational loneliness happens because of a situation, like a sudden situation. For example, maybe like a breakup, or like, moving to a different city. It can be very hard to adapt, right? So things like that give rise to situational loneliness. And then there's existential loneliness. So existential loneliness is that which is like, that profound sense of disconnection that we are feeling, from the world. Like, I think everyone feels it at this point, like, being connected, but at the same time there's this sense of isolation inside, that sense of, that longing for true meaningful connection is there, but we are not being able to meet. So that is existential loneliness, sort of, questioning your whole existential, like, why am I, feeling so lonely even when I'm so connected. So that is existential loneliness. Then we can also develop chronic loneliness. Chronic loneliness is like, basically when you've been feeling, developing this sense of loneliness from a long time, and it has, gone through for a long, very very long period of time, then it gets becomes very chronic in nature. So I hope this has answered your question, Bhavna.
Yes, it did. It did. Thank you so much, Dipshika ma'am, for putting it wonderfully. I am sure that this was knowledgeable and for a lot of viewers. And let's hop on to our next question. So how does chronic loneliness impact mental health? And are there any specific psychological conditions that are exacerbated by it? Or and are there any specific demographics that are more vulnerable to the loneliness in a digital age? Like, if so, why?
Thank you, Bhavna. That was like Very wonderful question, and I think it's a very important question too. So
Right.
basically, when just like Dipshikha mentioned, chronic illness is something when you go through a long period of loneliness, right? So it suppose a person going through loneliness for a longer period. If a person goes through a longer period of loneliness, it really affects your mental health, right? So it increases, since the level of loneliness in you or in a person increases from time to time, so it becomes a major risk factor for various psychological conditions or also physiological conditions. Okay, so when you have been lonely, or when a person is lonely for a very long period of time, which we uh, psychologists says persistent loneliness. Okay, when there is persistent loneliness, it triggers a stress response in the brain, right? It triggers a stress response in the brain, and there is a stress hormone that has been like a topic of discussion in a lot of social media platforms, as well as we mental health enthusiasts and also the people in medical line are very aware of, that is cortisol. Okay, so cortisol has been really you know it is now a very hot topic for discussion. Cortisol is really common. Okay, high levels of cortisol is what I mean. So high levels of cortisol in people are very common nowadays, and with it stems a lot of health issues. Okay, so when this persistent loneliness, it triggers a stress response in the brain. It releases cortisol and other stress hormones. Okay, so over time it can lead to inflammation in any parts of your body. It can just like I mentioned, it can uh, end up person can end up getting a lot of health related issues, and also specifically structural changes in the brain. Okay, and it will lead to a lot of uh, difficulties for the person, like memory impairment. The person might forget a lot of things. Okay, or it will be difficult for the person to remember, not actually remember, I would say, per se, but like recall something that recently happened. Okay, and then emotional regulation is also disrupted, like the person is not able to regulate their emotions. Okay, and also in overall it affects the cognitive functions. Okay, so there are certain ways in which chronic loneliness, it affects mental health. Okay, so we're going to discuss about that. Firstly, it increases the risk for anxiety and depression. So, anxiety and depression, they both are really common nowadays. It is the most, common mood disorder, with, I would say. A lot of people have anxiety and depression nowadays. Okay. And like with when loneliness is highly, there is increased loneliness, it is actually correlated with anxiety and depression. Okay, with different anxiety disorders and different depression mood disorders. All right, so what happens when you're lonely, when there is chronic loneliness, there stems isolation, right? The person is mostly isolated. All right, the person's like feels like they have to be alone, or they have to stay alone, or they have this feeling of mm, not talking with a lot of people. I don't want to talk with a lot of people. Nobody cares. All right. So what happens when you're isolated? It there is there is there stems a very increased rate of self negative talk. Self negative talk is basically when you tell yourself you're not able to do this. I am not I cannot do this, or I cannot be this person, right? And you become like, or the person becomes, they become very heightened to sensitive, sensitively, you know to rejection. They are very sensitive, they cannot accept rejection. Okay, and just like I mentioned, diminished self of diminished sense of self-worth. Okay, so it also, when there is when you are lonely, or when a person is going through chronic loneliness, the individual, no, they don't want to connect with other people, they don't want to talk with other people, and they don't want to have, even though they know they have supportive networks, there are a lot of supportive networks around, they don't like to connect with them, so that they can counterbalance their feelings. Okay, so next we have like cognitive decline and dementia. So cognitive decline and dementia, it is also a risk. High people are people who have or who are going through chronic loneliness have the high risk of cognitive decline and dementia, and they are mostly in older adults. So when you have lack of social interaction, it can lead to reduced mental stimulation, right? You don't interact with people, you only stay with yourself, you scroll through the phone, through your social media, or you stay on your laptop and you only do what is needed to be done, right? So it reduces mental stimulation, and mental stimulation is very very important for cognitive health. Okay, so, and it is also linked with brain plasticity, and it also leads to reduction of key transmitters, which is very important, and which is associated with our mood and memory. Okay, so next is people who go through chronic loneliness, or people who have chronic loneliness, they end up adapting, or they end up becoming addictive, or they end up developing compulsive behaviors. So, people who with chronic illnesses, they end up using substances, right? With behaviors, it's a behavior, right? You're alone, you scroll through your phone, or you scroll to your social media, and you start comparing yourself with others, and it's like your way out of the anxiety that you have been feeling, or your way out of the low mood that you have been feeling for a very long time. So people end up becoming you know addicted to their digital platforms, right? Phones, or some people, they end up overeating, they overeat to make themselves feel better, right? And also, these behaviors, they are like coping mechanisms for them, they are like helping them cope with the situation they have been feeling, right? So, and this coping mechanism, it actually worsens the feeling of loneliness, and it leads to further isolation. So next is sleep disorders. So these people who have chronic loneliness have a very difficult have difficulties to fall asleep. Okay, and people, they have they are not able to get proper sleep. It's like they might sleep, but they have only 2-3 hours of sound sleep, and also people end up having insomnia, cannot sleep at all, right? Or sleeps the entire day like that, all right? And also, it also increases the symptoms of, which in turn increases the symptoms of anxiety and depression. So coming to the next part of the question, the demographics, right? So if when we talk about the demographics, we mostly like, it's a stereotypical thinking that only teenagers or only young adults, are affected with social media, or with chronic loneliness, right? So which is, it is totally not true. So with the increasing in digital age, with the increase of development of technology in this world, certain groups, they are very vulnerable to loneliness, because sometimes, because mostly like digital life, they, they fail to satisfy emotional, needs, so deeper social and emotional needs. Okay, so firstly, it is people we call young adults, that is from age 18 to 24. So young adults, they are very highly connected to social media, right? Highly connected online, but they are the ones who reports high level of loneliness. Okay, so social media, they, it is a platform which might, or which most of the time creates unrealistic standards. Unrealistic standards in the sense, young adults, they'll look at a profile, they'll see there are a lot of followers, or they'll, go through someone's profile, and they'll have this feeling we call FOMO, that is fear of missing out, right? Like, this person is doing this person is so successful, and there stems also a comparison, right? Comparing oneself to the other person that they have never met or they have never interacted to, right? So which, and also social media is a platform where there have been reports of increased rates of cyberbullying. Okay, increase rates, and it can also lead to, which I mentioned right now, it leads to increased rates of, cyberbullying. And also meaningful face-to-face interactions lack a lot. Like, they talk over the phone, or they talk over their social media platforms, and like, well, let's meet, and that's just like, that stays. Face-to-face interaction lacks a lot. Okay, and they are very less frequent. So next are elderly people. So elderly people, when I say, when older adults, when I mention, particularly those who are widowed, okay, widowed, or those who have, mobility limitations, right? They are at high risk. So suppose, like, why I say people who are widowed or people who have mobility limitations, because a lot of people, even though they use, a lot of elderly people, even though they are, you know, they know social media, or they are introduced to social media, they may lack personal connection. Okay, that they crave, that older individuals generally crave, right? And some of them, they may also have, limited access or limited comfort. Some older adults, if you have come across older adults, you'll see some people, some older adults are not comfortable with social media. They're like, they don't understand this, they're like, I don't understand what is going on, I don't like this, right? So people, those people, they have, they are not on the high risk level, but definitely people who have, who go through, older people who go through, uh, you know who are always on their phone. There are a lot of older adults, or, elderly people who are always on their phone. They are always scroll through reels, mostly YouTube. They always watch YouTubes, right? So they are on the high risk of developing loneliness. Next, remote workers. So remote workers, they also experience, isolation, which is unique to the digital age. So though remote workers, they are allowed to work from home, they have, often, so they have social interactions in, through online meetings, online meetups, right? But face to face interaction is not there. And people, and remote workers, mostly they don't know how to, differentiate their, personal and professional life. Like, they are always stuck on their laptops or on their phones, and doing whatever that needs to be done, right? Next are people who, like, are single individuals or who lives alone. So single, so digital connectivity, even though a lot of people, I would not say, digital connectivity cannot form genuine relationships or genuine friendships. It takes a lot of time to though, but face to face interaction is very important, right? So digital connectivity for single people, they are not like, they don't want to form, in person relationships, right? So they, like, mostly people also who are alone, they struggle to, maintain social engagement online, because they are always busy with themselves, they are always busy with their work, they are alone, they have to take care of, themselves. So they are not the type to, talk. They feel like they cannot have, genuine friendships, so they just scroll through social media, or they just scroll through their phone, and, get, stay on their digital platform, and just, enjoy their own time alone. Okay, which is, to some extent, I would say, oh, it's okay to enjoy your time alone, but not in such a way that it stems loneliness, right? Every person here deserves their own alone time. Okay, it is something that we all crave in this busy world, but not in such a way that, the person ends up isolating themselves, and then, only only stays with themselves, and, like, get stuck with the digital world. Okay, so it is like, digital interactions, they, even though we have interactions, they lack the depth of in-person relationship. There is no genuine relationship in, digital interaction. Only when you meet the person face to face, right? Even though you meet the you when you have met someone through social media, suppose, until and unless you meet the person face to face, there won't be, a genuine conversation between both of you, right? So it is like a paradox, because high, even though there is high connectivity, there is low emotional satisfaction. So I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Thank you for those valuable insights which we got from Alankrita ma'am. With that, let's move on to our next question. So, what are some practical ways people can foster, deeper, more meaningful connections in a world that often prioritizes superficial interactions? Anyone could answer.
All right, Bhavna. I would like to go ahead with that question. And just coming back to what Alankrita said, that how, mental health is widely affected by the hyperconnectivity. I would just like to bring some, stats ahead, that after stress, loneliness is the second most widely common mental health issue worldwide. And India sits at like number 3, ranked number 3. In, you would imagine, like, India is such a populated country, why is it in number 3? So that itself explains that, loneliness is not about the number of people you have around you. It's more about the meaningful connections that you share, right? That what Alankita ma'am was saying so beautifully. So now to answer your question, we first of all, we always prioritize quantity over quality, right? So instead of doing that, we need to prioritize quality over quantity. So just to give an example of a garden, suppose you have a garden and you are sowing different kinds of seeds, and you're not able to nurture each and every plant. So as a result, what happens, you don't have like any quality product, right, or any quality flowers that are blooming. So same way with relationships, if you don't give enough time, if you don't give enough care, or like if you don't nurture the fewer bonds that are going to help you, or like the fewer bonds that are going to support you, then in the bigger picture, it doesn't really matter at all how many friends or how many bonds you seek, because you will end up having not a very quality friendship or a quality bond, right? So it's always better to seek out, or always better to nurture your few bonds, or like nurture the bonds that you have closer to you. right? So quality over quantity. And then one of the next I would like to share is that, people say that there is a lack of understanding. Suppose, like, even in our lives, we sometimes we feel very misunderstood or like not understood by the people around you, and that itself creates the starting or the beginning of the cycle of loneliness, because you're not being understood. That gives you that feeling that I am lonely, no one gets me, no one is, there, like, who is experiencing the same things as me. So that's how loneliness starts. So I believe empathy is one of the most important things that we can share, or one of the most important factors that we have in, forming these meaningful relationships. And emotional intelligence is also, like, you can connect empathy plus emotional intelligence, and that would immediately facilitate like better communication, or like, give us a better understanding of our own emotions as well as the emotions of the people around us. All right, and then participating in meaningful activities, not just in any kind of activities, like meaningful activities. When I say meaningful activities, I mean like activities which gives us pleasure, activities which gives us joy, like, our hobbies. It could be anything, like, reading, or it could be like watching movies or anything. Engaging in these activities and seeking out people who enjoy the same kind of activities can give us that sense of belongingness, right? So there's that. And then the next point that I'm going to bring up is something that we talk about a lot, but we haven't been able to do it. That is limiting our screen time. Right, it's easier said than done to limit our screen time. We're all victims of it, right? So what can we do for that? We have all those like app reminders, right? Set we in Instagram also we can set limits for daily limit. So we can actually start practicing those instead of ignoring the daily limit daily. So what can we do? Stuff like that. We There are even apps available on Play Store, App Store, for, setting your phone, or like giving a timer for the daily uses, right? Daily limit. So we can start with that. Then journaling is something which is like very widely talked about in the field of mental health. And it is not something that we just say that writing helps you feel better. It's actually something which is very much, helpful, right? Even just jotting down, you don't even need like a fancy journal or something. Even just taking a piece of paper sometimes and jotting down all the words or the thoughts, all the chaos going inside your mind, if you start jotting them down, even that can give you like a sense of relief, and like, like a open mind. And once you have an open mind, I suggest, like, speaking to a family member, at least to one of your close friends or a colleague or something. We'll have to sometimes we'll have to take that, take this self responsibility, self this take this thing of, like, breaking the cycle that we talk about. So like we'll have to take this force, or like take this thing by our hand and start doing, or like start using practical methods, right? And then we can something that we lack is practicing gratitude, right? It's missing. Like sometimes a person can feel lonely just because they are not being appreciated enough, maybe in their work, maybe in their friendship, maybe in their relationship. We often talk about, like, we are in a relationship but we are very lonely in that relationship. Why do we say it like that? Because we are not appreciated in that relationship, right? So just by, saying thank you to your partner, saying thank you to your mother, who's going through, or like who's doing these certain things for you, and can make them feel validated, can make them feel like, okay, yes, I'm doing something, I'm a part of something, I matter to someone, then can give them that feeling. So next, we can also be vulnerable. Well, by being vulnerable, I mean that saying out loud that I'm lonely, when you're feeling lonely, just saying it to your friends or family members, like I said, like sharing your own thoughts, that I don't feel appreciated enough, I don't feel that I matter to you. Like saying your thoughts out loud can also help, right? And then there are certain things like being a part of the community, like nowadays. So it's like, I would say, this is something that we don't do at all. Once we come home, or like once we come back to our own place, we just sort of tend to fall back into our bed and start scrolling, right? So instead of doing that, if we start just, I don't mean like to go out on the street and start talking to anyone, right? We can at least, start talking with the family members, or like, start talking with the, maybe if you live in a hostel or something, with your PG mates or something, check up on them. How are they feeling? So that could, in a hyper connected world, that could also act as a community service. So it doesn't have to be a very grand gesture. Like small things like that can also help. Lastly, going out of your comfort zone, that is one of the things that has seemed to work according to research. When you go out of your comfort zone, sort of your worldview sort of changes, and you sort of have like this deeper connection with yourself, not only with the people that you will be meeting within that journey, but also with yourself. So sometimes we'll just have to go out of your comfort zone, talk to the person you've been avoiding for so long, or like make that phone call you've been avoiding for so long. So small things like that can bring about the change. Or like, and like I said, we have to take this responsibility. We have to, like, break this cycle, or start breaking the cycle, because we are all affected by it. Right now we are all affected by hyperconnectivity, and it's the responsibility of every single one of us to start breaking this sort of loop or cycle. I hope I could touch upon the important points.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dipshika ma'am, for those practical tips. Striking a balance between meaningful connections and managing loneliness is so important, right? Okay, so building on to that, let's talk about strategies that individuals can employ to combat feelings of loneliness when they feel overwhelmed by the digital interactions.
So, Bhavna, I'd like to go with that question. So, just
Okay.
like Dipshika mentioned, there are certain things like she has almost like mentioned a lot of strategies that we can use to combat, you know, loneliness. So, it is like, the world is now, it's like full, oh, it's overwhelming with digital interactions, right? Everywhere you go, every place, anywhere, there would be a use of any any single digital platform. Like suppose you buy a 10 rupee packet of chips, upi is used most of the time, right? Most of the people have now, like, gone cashless, like, so it's like overwhelming, because every single time, every single second, there is use of digital platforms everywhere, right? So even though there are use of, there is, it is overwhelming, and like everywhere you go digital platforms are constantly being used, we can actually foster proactive steps. And like these are tiny steps to, help us combat feelings of loneliness, and help us, develop more meaningful connections, or they'll help us, develop emotional well-being, or make a, as a person, have a good uh, emotional regulation, I would say. So, the first is just like Dipshika mentioned, we have to prioritize quality over quantity in connections, right? So, it's not like, just like I previously mentioned, it's not like you cannot have deeper connections through online with your online friends. Okay, so if you even if you have meet on, talk with people online, genuine relationship often stems when you talk with that person face to face. Okay, so most of the connections online are superficial. They are superficial because there is no guarantee that you are going to talk to this person for a long time, right? Even though you have been, suppose uh, there's a thing, you talk to this person for at least a month, and then you stop talking to that person, right? And that's the reason why it's superficial. Deeper genuine relationships cannot stem through online connections. You have to engage into one-on-one conversation, or meaningful exchanges. And those exchanges, they shouldn't just mean like suppose you meet your friend, you have a close friend, you are not able to meet her, so you like talk with her online, right? And then there's this thing, we people as a whole, like a lot of us do share reels all the time, no matter what, no conversations, nothing, just share reel all the time, be it memes, be it anything, right? So sharing reels are okay, which like, because a lot of reels are helpful when you want to gain knowledge for educational purposes or for academic purposes. It is really helpful. I'm not saying reels are superficial, or reels are doesn't make any sense. It does. But then, like sharing reels with the person all the time, and not having genuine conversations. Like when you meet someone, you talk about life, you talk about the things you go through, you talk about something that happened to you 2 days ago. Like those are meaningful conversations. But when you talk online, the first thing is that you don't know the tone of that person, or you don't know what that person, like the situation of the person, right? So when you meet face to face, you have there is this deeper understanding. You are emotionally, you both, like, not both, I'd say, not only two people, a group, you all are able to connect with each other, able to connect with each other emotionally support each other. So when online conversations lack emotional support. So and then it is something, when you meet someone, no, it's like that, those meaningful talk, it goes beyond those likes and comments, right? It goes beyond that. It's sharing reels all the time, reacting, and then not having conversations. It is something which is not meaningful at all. So I'm not just saying like don't do that, do that. I myself, I do that. But also with time, you have to have to have meaningful conversations, and have to have face to face conversations, right? So next is like setting boundaries with technology. Just like Dipshika mentioned, screen time limit is very important. We often forget, you know watching a movie online or going through reels. You have watched reels like in 8 in the evening, and then you suddenly look at the time and it's already 12. It's a like it's a loss of time too, right? You just sit on your bed, or you just lay on your bed or anywhere, and just scrolling reels, or scrolling through any social media platform, which actually leads to digital fatigue, right? You feel strain in your eyes, there's headache, and it is also not really good for your eyes. As someone wearing specs, I really say it's not good for your eyes. Don't do that. Set screen times. And also when you scroll through social media, or when you are mostly involved with digital platforms, no, there is a lot of comparison, right? So when you compare yourself, so it is like it stems loneliness stems from that. Comparison based loneliness. Okay, so we can actually schedule a time, like suppose from this time to this time I'll be doing whatever that's needed on my, you know, on the digital platform. Some people, some people it is exceptional because they're mostly, you know, on their, they have to, you know, attend meetings after meetings, and it is impossible for them. But still, after meetings there's still a 5 minute or 10 minute break, right? So what, those 10 to 5 minute breaks can be taken as a break for, you know, screen limit, right? And then again, you know, there should also be some, like, you know, a zone called no phone zone, right? So have you ever like gone to cafes where there are no wi-fi's? Have you ever seen this like symbol, no wi-fi, there's no wi-fi, talk to people or act like you are in 1950s, right? You are in the 50s. So that is something we all should actually try. When we go to cafes with our friends, most of the time it's like we'll have a bit of meaningful like discussion, and then we'll engage on our phones, like, you know, click pictures and then upload in our social media and stuff. So for that period of time, I personally think, or like I would like advise people to just stop the, you know, scrolling through social media at that point and just talk about life. That is something, even though if you are a person, or if someone is going through loneliness and they get time to talk with that person for like almost an hour without any, you know, distraction from any digital platform, I feel the person will feel really better and will feel like relieved to some extent, will be relieved, right? So because most of the time people who are lonely or who have chronic loneliness, they have this feeling that nobody can understand them. Nobody can understand me, so I'm better off alone. So when you talk with people who it's like we generally call vibes, right? Who's with people with your, who's, you know, your vibes meet, you feel relief, and it is something that makes you feel better, right? So next is like engaging in face to face interactions. Like I mentioned, face to face interactions are very important. Face to face interactions are important because you know how the person is talking, you know the tone, right? You know the expression, and you know what situation the person is in. Like talking over the call is something, to some extent, is something that might help, but when you talk face to face, it's a different feeling, right? So when you suppose you meet your friends for coffee, right? Or you are going through, go through a local club where there are a lot of people, you just interact with them, right? So those interactions, they provide emotional fulfillment, and like, you know, without the pressure of, you know, seeking social interactions that is solely for connection. Okay. So next, that is pursue group activities or hobbies. Just like Dipshika mentioned, group activities doesn't mean you have to go out of your home and just, you know, you saw a group of people and then you engage with them. If you are able to do that, then that is really good. But a lot of people cannot, right? They cannot do that. When I say a lot of people, it is specifically people who are introverts, right? It is sometimes difficult for them to, you know, initiate a conversation or to work into groups, right? So when it is some important, suppose a person is going through a tough time and wants to meet someone, right? Wants to talk with someone. So the person, I would say, like, the person can actually, you know, personally meet up the person, you know, face to face meet up, and then talk with that them talk with the person they want to talk to. Because mostly when you're on the call, like I mentioned, it is something you don't, like, you don't understand, you don't see the person's expression, you don't see how the person is, you know, in the situation, what situation the person is, right? So it through, you know, group activities, it, you know, oh sorry, through yeah, group activities, they, you are able to understand, or through group interactions, or when you're talking with someone, you are able to understand, or you can know that the person other person might have similar interest like you. Right, you're talking to that person, and then you're like, oh, I like this movie, and then that other person, oh yes, I like this movie too. So you know what happened, like, what was my reaction when I saw this part. That is something that makes, that these are little things, these are very small things that can actually lift up a mood. So these are very important. Okay, so next is like mindfulness and self compassion. So mindfulness is something that has been regularly talked about. It is a very, famous, or a very, I would not say famous, it is a most advised or most recommended practice that psychologists, you know, ask, or psychologists uh, wants the person to do, wants their client or wants their patient to do, right? So mindfulness can be meditation, right, yoga. It is something that will also help you physically, both physically and mentally. And just like another very, talked about practice is that journaling, right? Journaling can be anything. It doesn't mean your journaling needs to make sense, right? It shouldn't have grammatical mistakes. It should make a proper sentence, or it should have a proper meaning. Anything that's on your mind you can write, and nobody is going to ask you what you wrote. Actually, journaling is something that makes you feel relief. You can, without any, fear of being judged, write anything there, anything that's on your mind. And then those things can help the person to become more comfortable with their own company. And then when you're not comfortable with your own company, you feel lonely, right? Because see, even though other people, a lot of people might tell you, like, not appreciate you for the work you have done, if you are comfortable with your own company, those words will not affect you to such an extent. Now there are a lot of, like, different individuals have different, understanding of things or perceptions. What might affect me might not affect you, right? So that is also something we need to understand. But still, when become comfortable with your own company, you understand yourself, you know your self-worth. It is something that will help you, not compare yourself with others. Okay, comparison is not there. Like, you'll understand that I am a different person. I am someone else. This person is someone else. The feeling of FOMO will definitely, vanish. Not vanish in the sense, I'd say it will not come to you that often, right? And it will help you manage feelings of loneliness more constructively. So next is, like, seeking support from mental health professional. It is something really important. Just like I mentioned, something that is very stressful for me, or something that is very, making me anxious, might not happen, like it might not do the same to you. So if it is getting too much, mental health profession seek support from mental health professionals. Okay, because it is a safe space for where you can share your feelings, or where you can, where the professionals can offer, coping strategies for loneliness. Okay, and counselors are there, therapists are there. They can help you with underlying issues that, that are the reasons, or that contributes to chronic loneliness. Okay, next, we have to remember, we have to use digital tools for connection, not comparison. So when we, like, when we come across many digital platforms, a lot of comparison is being stemmed from there. Like, like just like I mentioned before, feeling of being left out, FOMO, or like this person is doing better than I am doing, what am I supposed to do now, right? So how is this person able to do so much in such a young age, and why am I like I'm still in my late 20s and not being able to achieve anything in life, right? So digital tools can be used for connection. You can video call your loved ones. It is something, suppose you're not feeling good, video call your loved ones. It can be anyone, your boyfriend, your family, your best friend, anyone you're close with, right? When you also, you can join groups where they talk about your interests, like that can be anything. Like you are someone who likes animes, okay, you like animes, and then you want to interact people who have seen a lot of animes, like different animes, so you talk with them, like I like this particular anime. Do you like this character? And then you are interested in that particular conversation, right? And that is something that makes you feel better. So, and also there are different apps which promote mental health, mental well-being. There are different apps for even meditate for your, that helps you with meditations, like yoga, meditation. There are different apps for that too. So we have to understand how to use the digital tools, right? It is beyond like likes, or it is beyond being getting the most like comment, or getting the most like picture, or getting the most shared reels. It is more than that, right? We have to set intention to use technology for connection, just rather than scrolling, or just passive aggressively, just talking with ourselves how this person is doing there and getting jealous or comparing. We can actually use technology for connection, okay? So lastly, it is most importantly, physical activity. Physical activity is really important. Exercising is important. You have to exercise. It's not, some people, for some people it's difficult for them to go out, go on walks, or go for a run, right? They can actually, just like I mentioned, there are different apps, even apps for you to know exercise step by step, right? So like first, there is like there is this app where you can add your height and weight, and accordingly your exercise or your schedule will come, right? So you can use those apps. Or also, exercising, they are actually very important because they release endorphins, and they are someone who boost our moods, and they are someone who can, they are something that can reduce stress. So the most important thing is that we have to find balance, okay? Balancing everything is important over, like, because if we, even though if we are in a very in a world where everything is overwhelming, everything is digital now, we have to find a balance in that too, right? It doesn't mean that stop, stop using phone, or stop scrolling social media, or deactivate every social media platform you have and you'll feel better. It's not that. You have to, like, there are different ways, like I have mentioned. There should be a balance. And in-person connection, genuine connection, just like I forgot to mention, Dipshika mentioned, you have to get out of your comfort zone, right? Just because like this particular platform, or this you spending time on your digital devices makes you feel better or makes you feel comfortable, doesn't mean it is good for you. You have to step out of your comfort zone, and then find balance for your health, because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing is, it's something that you're doing for yourself and your mental health, right? So it is benefiting you. At the end of the day, it is benefiting you. So I would personally advise people to, even though this world is now like, hyper connected, always in a rush, in digital, technology is, everything is like, developing day by day. Suppose new things are being introduced, there should also be a balance, because just like I said, it is for yourself, you're doing everything for yourself, but and nobody else. It is you that you're helping, it is you that you're helping, it is you that you're, trying to look up to, right? And it is you that you are, trying to make, build up, or like, trying to make yourself a better person, or like not better person I would say, but like it is you, you yourself can only, make your health better. And there like there's a, and there are also, it's not like you don't have opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities. Use them properly, you, like, balance them properly, and you can like create a fulfilling social life, which is like, which prioritizes real connection over digital interaction. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Alankrita ma'am. Those were some really, really great strategies that we just discussed. Um, with that, we are almost at the end of the session. I would like to summarize the session a bit. So, our speakers highlighted how loneliness can persist even in our hyper connected world, right? Leaving people emotionally and socially isolated despite constant digital interactions. They also shared some very meaningful strategies to help manage this, right? Like setting um, healthy tech boundaries and focusing on like offline connections and prioritizing self care, basically. Um, Also, chronic loneliness isn't just about feeling alone, it can really impact your mental health. Like it often amplifies your anxiety and depression. There are other psychological problems that Dipshika ma'am mentioned, right? Especially in younger adults and older adults, and then remote workers, single people who are most at risk. Um, to counteract this, they also emphasize the importance of creating genuine connections, right? As we leave today, let's remember that meaningful connections require intention, and even small, real moments can make a very big difference in feeling truly connected. All right. So, in closing, I'd really like to express my deepest gratitude to our speakers for sharing their invaluable insights with us today. Your expertise has truly enriched this discussion. And of course,
Yes,
the heartfelt.
Pratna, I would
Yeah.
just like to quickly
Yeah.
add something that
Sure.
we should just really stress upon the fact that Alankrita ma'am highlighted that it is something that we are talking about, like the hyperconnectivity part, right? It is something that we cannot avoid. Things like FOMO are connected to it, right? So we live the age, or like the society has become in such a way that you cannot avoid it. It is something that you can't restrict also. You can't be without your phone, you can't be without those apps. It's the only thing I would like to say in the last, that we should learn the right uses of those apps, or like the balance, find the balance, like Alankrita ma'am said, to find the balance, and to look out for the younger kids, or like the younger population, to look out for the fellow members of the society, like, because sometimes we need to intervene. There is that need that we can help them just by reaching out. So that's also like really important. So limiting, not just we cannot restrict. Limiting is what we should prioritize, limiting the uses of those apps and balancing the uses of those apps. And thank you for this wonderful, the way wonderfully you've carried out this session. And thank you to Alankrita ma'am also, like she has given such in-depth answers. I was very, very glad to be part of this discussion.
Yes, for sure. This was very, very valuable. Of course, I also would like to give a heartfelt thank you to our viewers as well for the support and the enthusiasm. Psych Space is available in every social media platform. You can follow us on our Instagram page for latest updates and information. And for any professional help, we are just a DM away. Thank you all. Good night.